Hey, I'm Morgan, and I'm here with Arna. And today we talked with Marc Bolick. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about horses. We talked about we
Human
talked about
humans.
humans moving to France.
Yes, as a child, transitions, big jumps into the deep end. I think it's a beautiful story. I think a lot of people will recognize it, and it's about how do you actually grow, and what are the things that you do to kind of grow as not just as a human being, but also as a professional, but also just as a person that I don't know. One of the things. So I really love about Mark is that because I've known him for such a long time. So, and we talked about this a little bit. But he's in that sense he's very different than I am, and I know I shouldn't talk about these things too much, but so I find it often difficult to mingle in groups and to kind of just connect to people when I'm out there, right? Because I have too many. I don't
Your
know.
thoughts in our heads. Yeah.
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. And he does that in such a natural, such a nice way. So being walking with him through a city, which I've done many times, for instance,
hmm
is great because we have all these wonderful conversations, right? And I wish I had a little bit of what he has in that respect. So
Yeah, I
I love
agree.
that.
You can see that it comes very natural. Well, maybe not natural. He makes it look natural. It's you can tell that he really loves it and connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With
so
them.
making connection and why that is so important also, and also professionally. So he, as a leader and as a facilitator, as a consultant, as a making these human connections,
hmm
those are so important. And so yeah, so for me that's sort of what stands out. It's about sort of being uncomfortable, willing to be uncomfortable, seeing it more as a sort of a adventure, or being just curious, really wanting to know what the other person
Yeah.
is about, and so wanting to make that connection, and yeah, and just take that leap for traveling, but also just to say, hey, why are you here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I think, and it's funny because you and I are both curious. Mark is also curious, but then you and I have a bit more of we need the right context to have that to be a
yeah,
little bit more socially, yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah. So I
if,
need
if
people
I
like Mark. I
if
need
we could
people like
bottle
Mark.
his energy, if we could bottle his energy, we would be unstoppable.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do that. Okay. Um, well, yeah, enjoy the episode.
I'm just a simple Southern boy from South Carolina, is how I would say that in a joking way. But I'm like my identity is comprised of being a father, a husband, a son. Family is really important to me, and then I'm also like I self-identify as a recovering engineer. I have an
Mhm.
engineering degree, and um, I guess I'm a student of the world and a student of people, and really enjoy getting to know my fellow human wherever that might be, and love to travel, love to learn from other people. So those are the kind of things that I think I would say if I was sitting next to somebody in a bar stool, like, "Hey, how you doing? Where are you from?" So I'm actually from South Carolina and here in the US, and have made a couple of tours over to where you guys are in Europe. Early in my life, when I was 12 years old. Well, start like before that, I was born in Clinton, South Carolina, named after not the president, somebody else. And my father was not with the military. Most people ask, like, was your dad with the military? He was, but not when we were growing up. Uh, he did his stint and got out, but we moved to New York State for about a year and a half, and then to New Jersey outside of the the big city, the Big Apple, in the 70s. And yeah, it was a interesting time to be outside of New York City. It's not the city. It wasn't the city then that it is now. It wasn't a nice place. It's a lot of pollution and a lot of, crime and stuff like that. But it was still growing up outside of New York City, and that it had a big effect. A lot of the kids and the families that were living there in New York City or New Jersey the parents were driving into the city. And so it was pretty close. That had an effect, I'm sure, cosmopolitan sort of thing. So that was like 6 years. That was the elementary school years, except for I started my first grade in New York State in Corning. And then I think it was halfway through school, I went to New Jersey. It was weird because I remember they were teaching some kind of new math in New York State. And then I went to New Jersey and I was kind of like behind.
Like a new method to teach.
Yeah, it was some kind of new method or something like that. And I was like, I wasn't behind. I was always behind. I was like, trying to catch up. But anyway, when right at the time that I was the top dog in the school, it was grades 1 through 6. It was like April, my dad got this job with Michelin, the tire company. And, my parents sat us down at the table. I'm from a family of 4 kids, and said, okay, got some news. We're getting ready to move again. And we're like, oh no, and so they said, we're moving to
what age?
I was 12. And they say, we're going to move to France. And we're like, wait, that's that's far away and we don't speak the language, kind of thing. So we picked up, and the thing was, because I was the top, in the top level of the school, we were getting ready to do all the fun things, like go on the field trips and have the field day, and all that stuff was like 2 weeks away from when we left. Yeah. I was so mad. But anyway, so we moved to France. The other, to add insult to injury, as my family is one of our family sayings, when I got to France, that they were still in school, but for XYZ reasons, my parents and the people at Michelin that were taking care of us decided to put me in a class that was like 2 levels down from where I was. Oh. So I was like demoted totally. But then it was this thing of being in a different country, not speaking the language, just kind of wandering around and exploring, and the feelings you have as a 12-year-old boy, with that kind of stuff going on, growing up things, but it was an adventure. I got on my bike a lot. I would go riding around the hills and stuff like that. And
were you guys were you in a big city? Were you suburbs, village in the middle of nowhere?
It's a place called Clermont-Ferrand, which is in the middle of France. It's where Michelin is headquartered. And if you think of the United States version of that would be like Toledo, right? Or in the Netherlands, it might be, I don't know, the middle, Den Haag or Den Bosch or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were there for a year. Then we moved to, it was great. Like, it was one of these things where when we left, the adults were saying, oh, this will be the best experience of your life. And we were saying, we weren't allowed to say what we were thinking, but no, that's not exactly what this happened. This is trauma here.
Yeah.
But indeed, it was this super influential part of my life. And then after a bit more than a year, so we got over there in like May, and then we left after school the next year. And then we stayed until the end of vacation in France, where France basically used to shut down for the whole month of August. Literally, like everything except for tourism would shut down, all the factories and stuff like that. And we just got to see all this stuff. Every weekend, my parents took us. We had the Michelin guide, and my mom would be in the passenger seat, and she'd be reading where we were going and what chateau we were going to go see, or castle or whatever. And we were kind of like fussing and bored acting, but at the same time, it was like fascinating. We got to see all this really cool stuff, like the armor with the little swords, and hear these stories and all that kind of stuff. But then after that vacation, we moved to England, and we lived in Newcastle under Lyme, which is not the Newcastle upon Tyne. It's outside of Stoke-on-Trent, and Stoke-on-Trent is the equivalent of Clermont-Ferrand, which is an industrial city known for its potteries. So that's where a lot of the English ceramic work and potteries and stuff are based. And that was, again, another kind of cultural shock, right? Like, they speak my language, but they're not at all the same kind of people. And it was shorter. It wasn't quite a year that we were there. It was the school year. And then after that, we moved back. And I was like, I kind of, like, in reflection, I kind of liked France because they speak this different language, and it was real cool. And I learned how to speak French pretty well. Not great, but pretty well. But England, I was like, yeah, get me out of here. And because it wasn't my thing, right? And ironically, I'm married to an English woman, and I don't know if there's some circularity there or something like that. But and I love England. Don't get me wrong.
But where did you meet your wife? Not when you were in England.
Yeah, when I was at General Electric, it was like
so that's
my
later.
18 months into my job at GE. Yeah.
And you mentioned you mentioned that you're one of 4 kids. Where do you fall in that, and how close are you guys in age? Yeah.
So it's my sister's the oldest. I think 3 years between her and my brother, 2 years between my brother and me, and then 5 years between me and my younger sister.
Okay.
And I'm going to get in trouble for that because I'm sure somewhere I got that wrong, but it's roughly right. Don't ask their birthdays, please. That would be embarrassing. Yeah.
No, but you guys are like this little gang of kids just being exploring this new
And my parents were really sensitive. They would dress us up all in the same, like, rain jacket when we were walking through Heidelberg or whatever, like all these like things that we would pick up at this French supermarket called Mammut at the time. Uh-huh. And we all had matching bright orange, like, rain jackets. We were so cool. Like, couldn't tell us from the locals at all. Right?
At all.
No. My parents got the nice blue rain jackets, but we had the bright orange or bright red or something.
Little
like
ducks all in a row.
Yeah. So anyway, we lived in England. Then we moved back here to South Carolina because Michelin's European headquarters are here. Real quick, high school in Greenville, went to Clemson University. Then I went with General Electric up to Milwaukee, and I bounced back and forth between Milwaukee and France because when I started with GE, I said I was on this training program, and they said, it was kind of like the military. You can express your interest in 3 places you would like to go, but we may or may not take that into account. And the only thing I said is, I didn't write any locations or businesses. I just said anywhere where I can go overseas. And they assigned me to Milwaukee because GE had just bought this medical division, or this medical company based out of Paris. And I was like, okay, that's cool. They said, you may not go. I mean, it's just, So anyway, I ended up going back over to Europe several times, back and forth with GE, and then eventually went back over, I guess it was early 30s, and took a job in Paris. So it didn't suck, right? Like, Paris was really nice. And especially when I was early over there, it was in my mid-20s, pretty amazing. And then I went to work for a Dutch company, and then I went and got my MBA, and then I started being a consultant at that point. And after my daughter was born, and after living 10 years in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and learning to have absolutely fluent Dutch. Nobody does that is not Dutch. That's a fallacy. But then moved back to Greenville to be near my family. One of my parents was ill with cancer, and so I came back here for that reason, and because we wanted to be either closer to my wife's family or to my family. So that's kind of the double, at least 2 big rounds from South Carolina over to Europe and back. Was, I don't know, that's the way I remember everything. It's just like a visualization in my head of anyway.
Exactly.
And I so the first thing I thought of when you were introducing yourself is how you describe yourself is based on connections to other people. And then you said you're a recovering engineer. So can you elaborate more on what you mean by that?
Engineers are people too.
No,
they are.
I want to demystify this a bit. Yeah.
They have feelings.
Can't say that in this podcast. Sorry. No, everyone's switching off now. They're like, no.
Well, I'll tell you what. I don't know, Morgan. Was that? Were you implying that engineers aren't people? I'm seriously like, what was your question?
Well, no,
you call yourself a recovering engineer.
So there's something that you want to move away from the association that typical engineers have. That somehow engineer, and then you're somehow doing something new and improved from the traditional role. And I mean,
I like saying recovering engineer because it makes people laugh. Quite frankly, that's the only reason. I'm never not going to be an engineer, right? Like, there's a difference between being an engineer and being a good engineer. And I don't see myself as like, so engineers, like a lot of engineers don't do engineering, right? But it depends on what you talk about, what engineering is. And bear with me here. Engineers are problem solvers, first and foremost. Humans are problem solvers. And the kind of work that I do now is just a different version of problem solving. And oftentimes when I'm doing my work, and if I'm in front of people and we're talking about solving some big problem, I go, how many engineers in the room? How many accountants, right? And people raise their hand and I'm like, we're all just problem solvers. And so when I say recovering engineer, it's just a joke, quite frankly. And it's try to sort of make people laugh a little bit. And also, it's usually a precursor to explaining that, we can all do this design process. It's something that everybody can learn, and we all do it whether we know we're doing it or not. And it's just a set of words. It's just a made up framework to help people solve problems collaboratively, right? Which
but still there's a stigma around.
There's a stigma,
right?
Totally a stigma,
especially amongst designers.
That's what I mean. So no, but that's why it's funny, because then it's funny. If you have a crowd of engineers, they go like, "What do you mean?"
Well, engineers are much maligned, much like lawyers. And I was sitting at a table of that had 2 lawyers at it, and everybody was like throwing bananas and stuff at the lawyers, and tomatoes, but. It's a profession, and it teaches you a way of thinking, basically.
For sure. I'm an industrial design engineer, so neither side wants me. It's really lovely.
Yeah, I know. Yes, you're terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah. So make up your mind. Come on.
But I think it's nice that but even just like playing with that word, right? Like recovering, like it's already kind of stretching the borders of, okay, let's, because we're all problem solvers at the end of the day. And, how can we kind of stretch out of that? Yeah.
Well, it's language again, right? So it's funny how you then have to find a new language to actually say, well, actually, we are all similar. We might have learned kind of different approaches or a different language, but we have to come up with this new. In a way, for me, that was what design thinking in the beginning was about, to create a language. So I think I once said, for me, it's that glue that connects everything. Sort of having that language that says, okay, you're an engineer, you're a designer, and here's a common language. So you can actually learn from each other and listen to each other, because you can learn so much because of all these different experiences and different toolkits and different, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I think that's what we are trying to achieve, at least have a language that we all share. And I think that's something that Yeah, I'm just thinking because that basically has been our connection as well, obviously in the past, right? So it's this where you're a recovering engineer joke does kind of say that. That's sort of where it goes because it's the bit of that's why it's funny and it's also so true because the recovering part is the openness, is saying I am open to other people and other opinions, and right. So you're and humor and making a joke is literally a way to open up people. So it's such a so in a way it's a simple joke, but it has actually quite a lot of layers, I think.
Most of my jokes are really simple.
Yes.
And if I can remember them, that's one that I can
But you're so deep. Really, if you think about it, you're so deep. You have so many layers in that joke. They're so amazing.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on this particular statement.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do that. Let's talk about that for an hour. Yeah. So no, I think it's such a it's also something about it tells us something about you, because you have been kind of through all kinds of transitions. So in a way, it's also part of who you are and who you became, maybe because you were kind of forced to kind of go and jump into the deep end in France and go like, no, it's. But in a way, it's interesting, right? That you. And I have kids, and we thought about moving to I mean, even moving to another city, let alone another country. And actually, we didn't. But in a way, and I would have hated it in the beginning. But I know being sort of kind of forced to kind of learn about new cultures, different ways of life, and it's such an enriching experience, like you said. Is that something?
Even travel, right? Like I live in a country where some people don't get out of their county, much less out of their state or out of their country or have a passport, right? But,
yeah, exactly.
Agree.
Yeah, no, it's we had a podcast interview with Lee Kim. You know her from her wearable traces.
I sure do.
And
I've got one. I would go get it if you'd give me a second, but no, I'm not. I can't put it on over my headphones.
Amazing. Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. No, but it's she basically, obviously, she also traveled from Korea to the US and etc. But in a way, her wearable Tracy, the crowns that she creates out of these pipe cleaners, and is also a way of, it's also a little bit of traveling because you put yourself outside of all these kind of bubbles out there, like you're really putting sort of, people will look at you and go like, huh. And so you'll have new meetings that you would, new conversations you would never have, So in a way, travel, even if you don't leave your country, you can meet other people, right? You can go on the same bus every day, but you are able to, if you're willing, you can have a conversation with someone new every day. That's such a, I don't know.
I love what Lee does, and the way she describes it. She has that video where I think it's one of the I don't know if it was New York Times or
New Yorker.
It's the New Yorker did the video on her, and the way she describes it is, at one point she says, she just loves how it opens other people up to come up to her and ask her what it's about, right? And that's a really interesting story. It's fascinating, right? Her whole backstory and everything, but just the wearable traces, and that, like, that's a dumb name. Like, who would ever come up with that name? But it's because she didn't think about it, right? Like, it was just, this is my friend that it was around Tracy's birthday or something, and she made it, and it was like, blah, 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 this is my whatever. And then it just blossoms out into this huge creative thing. And what I love about it, and kind of what we're talking about, is making connections with other people and being curious. That's a natural thing. And sure, that's something that I'm like really into. And I guess I don't believe in the duality of introvert and extrovert, but I do do skew towards extrovert in certain situations. I've learned not to be intimidated by going up and talking to people and approaching people and like, you know, you're in a thing and you're on this journey of life and somebody's next to you in the supermarket or whatever. And you just say something, you know, wow, these vegetables are beautiful, you know, like whatever. and sometimes, or better, like you're in a weird experience with somebody, like you're standing in a line or something like that. And of course you could just like cross your arms and just kind of sit there and wait and look away. But what's the fun in that? You're just wasting your life. You know, why not just engage with people? And, you know, I'm not saying I can do that all the time, but that's how it's like, you just rack up so much experience. It's almost like life is a game, and the more you can experience, the better. I'm not judging what kind of experience. It could be a lone experience. It doesn't have to be a in-person experience, you know, two people, but and then it's the conversation that comes out of that, right? You have no idea really, unless you're acting, and even then, what somebody's going to say back to you, right? So it's kind of the unexpected. It's exploring people's personality and the context and all that kind of stuff. It's just, I love that.
And that's very like a very American trait as well. Of course, not all Americans are this way, but just that willingness to make this small talk and chit chat with somebody at the grocery store. If I tried to do this here, it would be it'd be skeptical at first, and then they would say something, but the immediate reaction is skepticism and kind of, okay, why are you telling me that these artichokes are beautiful? Like,
I'm doing my shopping. Could you just leave me alone? Okay, please.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dinner by 6, please.
Yeah. We just see, I have my,
it's not 6:01. It's not 6:02. It's 6. We're going to do dinner at 6. The kids are waiting and I've got to be back at 5:48. Otherwise I'm in trouble. Got to get that lettuce back so I can make a salad.
But when you came over as a kid, did you notice, or even then in Paris a bit older, did you notice these cultural differences? And did that change like how you interacted with people in a big way?
When I came back to the States was where the impact was, right? Because when I was in Europe, much more so the first time, I had a different set of lenses on completely. And as soon as I stepped off the plane coming back, I can't remember where we probably came into New York. I was like, all of a sudden, I was a man of the world. And I looked at Americans like, these are crazy people. Right? And so I had
You're
put on this
13 at this time, right?
14.
13, 14. Okay.
14.
Yeah.
You're all crazy.
And I came back to South Carolina, and I know you had Colin Skelton on a previous. I just happened to hit the moment where he talked about living in Myrtle Beach and how like South Carolina is not very exciting and yada yada. And I'm going to have a word with him about that, Colin. Colin, I heard that. You're right. At that time, it was not exciting, and it depends on how you define exciting. But yeah, I absolutely the cultural context is part of that. I don't know, for me, exploration that I don't go around life thinking I'm exploring, you know, but it's a curiosity. That's kind of who I am, is really, I love people. And I think all people are fundamentally, I think even the bad people they weren't born that way. You know, I mean, you got to give people, I believe in humanity, and we're in a world of hurt right now in many, many ways, but I think we're all fundamentally good. And I guess it's just every day I want to reinforce that. I want to connect with other people. I want to have a meaningful conversation, even if it's, just calling up a family member or an old friend, or sometimes it's just a text message that just kind of gives you a signal back that, hey, I'm not crazy. This world is messed up, but we're still all connected, So I love that about that conversation, connecting with people.
Yeah, you're. It's interesting. We talked to Lee. I just the way because we actually there was an example of we talked about where for instance, I said you are waiting on the bus and you're wearing this wearable Tracy, and I'm also waiting on the same bus. I would probably think this is really interesting, and I wouldn't say it because I am more of an introvert, and I don't know, I'm weird about these things, and I think it's weird myself because I'm like, why didn't I say anything? And then after a while, I go, now it's too late because now it's going to be weird. I've been there.
Oh, it's awkward.
Now it's awkward. Now it's too late. Too awkward. So there's all this stuff chatter in my head, and you're the guy that comes to the same bus stop and goes straight away, whoa, that's amazing. So that's the yes, introvert. That's the well, it's not introvert, but so you can be different people in different times.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that because I don't know how she would respond. So in my mind I go like, maybe she doesn't want to have a conversation. No, I think she does. Why else would she wear it? Yeah, but listen to me. So there's all these things that I try to kind of figure it out. And then I go, why don't I just say so? And then there's people like you go like, you go like, wow, this is amazing. What are you wearing? Why is that? And then you have this amazing conversation, and I'll be there listening in, but I'd be like, yeah, I can't join in now. This is really weird because I've been here for an hour. It's like, right? So,
hey, why didn't you say something? I mean, you were here before me.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't you talk to her?
You didn't notice that hat?
I didn't. Oh, and then I'll go like, oh no, I didn't see it because I'm so embarrassed that I didn't say anything. So that's a part of my life is like that, and also part of my life is not like that. But you can be different people at different times.
Sure.
But I'm very jealous of people who can be spontaneous without thinking. Like, how would that person? What does that person want? Would they like to have a conversation? Is it okay? Maybe they don't want to, or what is their intention, et cetera, et cetera. I have too many voices in my head. This sounds really bad. I'm going to edit this out. Anyway, but I think that people who have, as you call it, trauma, but as a child, traveling, seeing the world, I think that, and not only enriches your personality, but also you've seen so many options, and you've seen, you've met so many people. You have been in moments where it has been awkward, or you were alone, or you had to make a connection because you were in a different culture, et cetera. So being uncomfortable, and that's also what Lee Kim said. She's wearing it. She wants to be uncomfortable. Is one of the things that quotes from her.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Which is like, you want to be uncomfortable. Yes. And I know, and that's also, but in a way you go, I want to have a job abroad. That's not being, because you can do it, but it's also willingness to be uncomfortable, to get that adventure, because an adventure is typically kind of not comfortable. An adventure is like, oh shit. What's going to happen? Oh my God, and curiosity is also about not being comfortable. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm curious. So the willingness to be uncomfortable. I love that the way she put it, like I want to be uncomfortable. Like, oh, it's such an interesting, but you have that, right?
And do you think that was modeled, like, because of course your parents made the decision to move the family abroad and put you in this situation that you wouldn't have chosen for yourself, sixth grade. But do you think that your family also models or created this kind of like open and environment where you're constantly pushing yourself? Or is this more also something you kind of discovered for yourself? Like, hey, because of this, it's something I want to keep pursuing.
Yeah, we're a product of our environment, right? So I can't say no to that, Morgan, because they created the environment, and so I think that the things that we did, the fact that our parents took us on all these little adventures, all the time, whether we liked it or not, was their way of saying, look, we got to make the most of this. And they had lived, well, so my mom is from North Carolina, and don't think she did a lot of traveling before she met my dad. But my dad, his father was in the military and in the army. And so he grew up moving all the time. I think he has lived in, like, I don't know, 20, 30 different places, houses. He has a hard time counting them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And he talks about, his adventures, and I think it's just awesome listening to your parents' stories, right? But it's clear that both my mom and my dad, like, modeled, whether consciously or unconsciously, what they had experienced. And my mom and dad moved when my dad was in the Army after he got out of school. He was in ROTC, and they went over to Germany, and he was stationed over there. And my mom was, an Army wife, if you will. And my sister, my older sister, was born there. And so obviously they had that in them, and they transferred that for sure to their children. No doubt. All of us are that way. I think it's just kind of nature of the beast, really. You can't avoid being influenced by it's nature versus nurture, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I just realized that all the people that have been on this podcast, I think I should go back and check, but I think probably 99% of them all had a similar experience of traveling as a child with parents that moved around. Travel, I think traveling is a big component of people that are, obviously probably also in my network and my community, the people I can reach out to, but also sort of in the world of kind of, creatives, creative thinkers, or people who are looking for new ways. Also people who want to, so a lot of them are entrepreneurs, have been entrepreneurs, or, et cetera, et cetera. So I know it's interesting how travel is one of those, and because we're looking at when do you become a sort of what we would call a creative leader, and that's not a hierarchy thing, but it's more people who go out there and show that there are other ways, that there are more options. You can do things different. Like Kim, she's a creative leader because she shows a completely new way of being, and you go like, wow, I didn't know. Is that possible? Can you do that? Right? So those people are what I would call the creative leaders, where you go, I didn't know you could do these things. And it doesn't have to be big things or that, extreme. It can be small things, but travel, I think it's a big component of how you become comfortable with the uncomfortable. At least that's what I think.
I think that you hit the nail on the head. That it's comfort, and I think we all want to be comfortable, and I think it's people who recognize that they can go and do something different and find a level of familiarity with the change that they're going through. And I in my world, right, what the kind of work I do, right? Like we talk about innovation, and I don't know, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with that word.
Because those who can't see the video, he put innovation in air quotes.
Thank you, air quotes. Because I talk about it as means all things to all people and nothing to nobody, right? And that's like it. You can overcome that by saying, okay, well, what does innovation mean to you? Please write that down. Let's all write that down, and let's then look at, so like, what does the word cloud look like? And, oh, okay, that's kind of what it means to you. Good. If we're going to do that, let's just be real clear that that's what it is. And we've, I just said, oh, well, innovation, I tried to write it down for myself a million times. The two words that came up for me are big change. It's not just little incremental stuff. You can do incremental innovation, but but it's everything that we do. I used to talk about like coming up against the wall of change or the wall of culture, right? Those two things are walls that you bump into when you're trying to do big change. And yeah, you bump up against the wall of change when you're trying to be, yeah, never mind about that. That was bad. So, but it is, and I think that that optic of Lee Kim about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, certainly getting on the New York subway with a bright pipe cleaner hat thing on, has got to be a little bit uncomfortable and then I assume, I don't know what the word is to use, but I guess that she's probably comfortable being uncomfortable in that way. But I guess there are some days she wakes up, because she does this, for people don't know this story, she does it every day. She makes a new, I assume she's still doing it. She did this for years, like 2 or 3 years. Every day she makes a new pipe cleaner hat. And there've got to be days when she wakes up and she's just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Or, it's raining outside and, whatever. She's just not, I don't know. What does she do? Put a hat on? No, she shouldn't put a hat on. She's got an umbrella or whatever. It's the wind's blowing and all that kind of stuff. It just becomes like an issue. Right. But I do think that one of the things about getting people to create new stuff, whatever that is, to be creative, especially to be collaboratively creative, they have to get comfortable with the change, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it's magical, right, Arna? When you do something in a group or whatever, or just one-on-one with people, and you kind of experiment and you play with that and you say, okay, what was that like? And they're just then introspect on what was happening to them, both physically and psychologically, mentally, about what discomfort is to them, right? Like, I'm perspiring and, I'm really nervous and all these other kind of things. And I was like, okay, good. You're seeing those signals from your body. You're seeing those signals in your mind. Get in touch with those, because we're going to have to do a whole bunch of that. Right. And you'll get sort of, it's not desensitized, but it's getting comfortable with the fact that you're going to have to go through that process for a while to get to that destination that you're trying to get to, both as an individual and as a team. Right. So,
yeah, it's growth. So you feel, the pain is the growing, that's, and become called change, but it's growing. It's so
biomimicry, right? Like you
exactly.
Pinch off the little thing on the flower, and so that more energy goes to the places you want it to go.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah,
for sure.
So I think we're not we're somehow and if you do a lot of training and coaching, you start to see that some people are there just to consume some information, but they don't want to really be uncomfortable. They just want to consume stuff. They were like, "Oh, tell me what's the book I should read," or show me a tool. But if you really want to kind of coach people and change, then they need to be uncomfortable. They need to be. There's no other way. There is no other way. You have to go like,
Yeah.
This is
but people don't want to be uncomfortable, right? So how do you get people? How do you look? I mean, this is what the change thing is all about, right? It's getting people to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, like we've talked about, and that's resisting like an innate human, I don't know if it's a behavior, but characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're seeing results of that all over the place. And I think that technology in some ways is pushing us more and more into where everything has to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to be comfortable with our tribe, and you are comfortable with your tribe. And that's kind of like the opposite of the travel thing, right? Is to stay with your tribe at home.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and be comfortable.
Yep.
And the way the world is going right now, it's kind of pushing us back into the tribal sort of what is comfortable, and our consumer society wants us to be comfortable with everything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's really, it's hard to get people to wrap their head around the need for that. And society as a whole is a whole different thing, because we're going to have to go through a boatload of change, like fundamental economic, political, everything is going to have to change if we're not going to survive as a species the way we are. It's just everything is going to have to change, right? So
yeah.
I'm talking about climate, if anybody has any doubt about what I'm talking about. Yep.
That's the only change we need. Yes. There's a really nice quote that I keep bumping up to in my work. People want change, but they don't want to change.
Yeah.
And that's the, how can we?
I like to challenge that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Because I think people, I think people don't want to lose control, or they don't want to have a sense of, they don't know what's going to happen, because it's not a matter of wanting to change. They're changing all the time. We change all the time. We just change. This podcast has changed.
It's a good point, Arna. I'm just going to take it. Because
all right, I'll stop talking.
I'm going to give you that one.
Do you think
they want to be in control? You're right. Absolutely. 100%.
Because also, like, a lot of the change that happens is also not subconscious, but just like it just so either so small in the background that we're not aware of it happening. But like you also say, that you're bumping into this wall of change. Like it's big, it's scary. It's okay. We're up with our nose against this big thing. And do you think that's also a part of it, like the steps? Because you also talked about I don't know.
Yeah, you have to break it down. I don't know. I mean, I think, Arna, you made a great point. I'm never going to say that again, but you made a great point that it's about giving people.
It's on record, literally.
On record, like you can play it at the beginning of the pod, and at the end of the pod, you can actually use it as your intro for every podcast from here on. Arna, you're right. But it is giving people a sense of control, and I think it's breaking change down into smaller pieces, right? And I guess that's like a lot of things. If you're going to do something, like if you're going to run a marathon, you don't start by running a marathon. You start by jogging around the block. Obviously you want to go out and get some nice shoes or something like that, but you kill yourself literally, potentially, if you go out and try to do it all in one go without any practice. Hey, I'm going to start running marathons. How are you going to do that? I'm going to run my first one tomorrow. No, you don't do that. You train into it, right? You bring the change on, and
it's
increments.
Painful. It's going to hurt.
Oh yeah.
Even the training for it, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
So the point is not just the control, obviously, of when your parents took you to France, you didn't know, what you now know, the result of it. You had no control. We need your parents basically to push us. They go like, yes. So sometimes, although you didn't have any control over it, so it was not, but it was still, the change was okay. So it's really complicated. So I don't want to run marathons, right? So if someone pushes me to run marathons, it wasn't. But I do know for sure that if I want to run a marathon, right, if it's a goal I have and I'm going to train for it, it's going to hurt. Right, it's going to be painful. It's going to be difficult, but that is growth. That is you're making yourself stronger. You're getting more. So
this is absolutely, Arna. But people don't want change. But the way that I think they don't want pain. I don't want pain. But what they want to do is they want to know what the journey is going to look. It's really, really helpful if somebody who's been there and done that before can say to you, okay, here's what's going to happen. Be prepared for the pain at this point. Be prepared for blisters. Be prepared that you're going to go through this period of, I'm not a marathon runner, so I could just make stuff up. I'm a cyclist, right? And I will tell you that there's a great example, maybe. I just had COVID a couple of weeks ago, and I've been off the bike for 2 weeks or maybe 2.5 weeks until yesterday. I got on my bike and I went in our local little team, a club up over the mountain. And I knew that mountain was going to hurt. But I knew that because I've been there. Right. And so being able to tell people, and, I think there's a lot in change management to be able to get people prepared for the change. Right. And it's mental preparation, it's physical preparation, and it's like tools and techniques and all that kind of stuff. Capability building as is fancy way that we talk about it in the consulting world, right? And that's also in leadership. Leaders, good leaders, will be able to prepare people for what they're going to lead them to do.
That's a safe space.
Yeah, they create like this emerging bubble of safety in front of the change or something like that. I don't know.
Well, otherwise you don't trust. I mean, if you don't trust that leader to tell you, like, this is going to happen, it's going to hurt, you go like, and it's normal, that's supposed to happen, but we're doing it because that's what we're going to, aim for. And so, and I think what I really like, sort of as when so I don't know which book I read it in, but it's a quote from a book, and it said, you cannot convince people of anything, especially if they think you're going to convince them of something. They'll go like, right. They go like, nope. People can only convince themselves. So you give them the information and the options. You say, if we do it, this will happen. If we don't do it, that will happen. Mm-hmm. What do you want? And then people should go like, all right. And you trust them to take the right option. This is a sort of, we've in consultancy, and especially if you're in innovation, and this is almost a cliche. You say, what if you don't innovate? Mm-hmm. What will happen then? And we're like, okay, right. But it's so people have to make up their own mind. That's the only way people can kind of, so you cannot do it. So that safety is also about giving people the information, giving them the trust, and telling them, what's going to happen, whatever, choice you make, and letting them make the choice. Yeah. That is so difficult in the current system. So to your point, so many things have to change in order to actually be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of like the own change in my own life, and I worked with a life coach who specialized in transition. So how do you handle transitions? And for me, I have to get backed into a corner. And like you said, this is what happens if I innovate or make a change. This is what happens if I don't. And when that happens, then I make a choice that feels best for me. And usually it's to go for a big change. But if we're also so comfortable all the time, we're kind of patting ourselves or creating this like cushion between that discomfort of, okay, I'm backed into the corner. How am I faced up against this? So also climate change, I'm really concerned that it's going to have to get super painful and super uncomfortable for all of us until we actually start doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Yep. Drop a bomb.
Yeah. All right,
Morgan,
folks, that's the end
of our podcast. Do you want us to respond to the we got to change a lot? Yeah.
But more personal question. How are you, of course, you just climbed a mountain on your bicycle. What are you working on right now that you're kind of pushing that discomfort border for yourself?
Mm-hmm. I think the thing I'm working on for myself is how to motivate other people. And it's exactly what we've been talking about is it's a constant learning process for me to be able to help other people in the right way at the right time, bring the right resources to them. And I'm also fascinated with this leadership thing, right? Like, what does that really mean? And do I want to be a leader type of thing? And and that's a big learning journey, right? I think even the best leaders in the world are probably thinking about that constantly, right? Like, am I doing the right thing? It's interesting because yesterday I happened to catch this little clip on LinkedIn that was about Colin Powell. You remember him? He's the guy that got up in front of the Security
Yeah.
Council and said, "We absolutely have detected, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq."
We'll never forget.
That Colin Powell, the guy whose hand I shook when I graduated from college, he was our keynote speaker. But he talked about when he was in battlefield school, sometime when he was a young lieutenant, about leadership, and this was interesting. It really hit me. Said, as a great leader, something like this: you when you're cold, don't show them that you're cold. When you're hungry, don't show them that you're hungry. And if you're scared, don't show them that you're scared. And I'm like, hold on a minute. And that's a military like mindset, if you will. It's a classic leadership mindset, right? And I was like, that's got to be like totally against everything I think and believe. Although there's got to be truth to it as well, right? Like, it's leadership style and so forth and so on. And I mean, so breaking it down, I'm like, that's totally the antithesis to the be vulnerable leader type of thing, right? Like, but he did say that it's also about being a servant leader. And I can totally get, and this got me kind of thinking, is like, there are times when you should not show people that you're scared. You want them to your point earlier, Arna, you want them to trust you. And he did talk about trust, and that's how, and so that got me thinking about like this difference between, the vulnerable part of being a leader, which also helps to build trust, and the part of the leader, which is like, I see no fear, to use an exaggerated way of putting it. So I discuss.
I have a story, which is, we were on vacation and we went to Italy, and we were on an island, and my daughter really wanted to rent a boat, and I was like, okay, because you could go to all these islands and beaches and stuff like that. So we rented a boat, this kind of dinghy, not too big, but a little fast boat. And so I have a little boat at home, but we never been on the open sea, if you will. And so we were going to one of the islands, and then we wanted to go around one of the islands. That would lead us basically to open sea. So because the islands would shelter you from the wind and some of the waves, and so we went on, and then the waves were quite big all of a sudden. And and this dinghy is light, and my son and wife were sitting all the way up front. So, and that would go like 2 meters up, and then boom, smash down on the water. And then my son was going like, "Mom!" She was yelling. He was really scared. So, to your point, I showed that I had no fear whatsoever. I actually sang a song. I'm like, "Yeah, no, this is really funny." And I'm like, "No worries, it's okay. I'm fine." He looked at me, "Is it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine." And I was like,
you were scared shitless.
Holy shit. What the hell
what have I done?
What have I done? I got to get out of here. I was like, oh my God. So literally what you just said, there are moments, a time when you're like, it's okay. No worries. We'll get there. No, this boat, you look at it. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Right. And I always try to be the more open, vulnerable. That's a bit more my style, but to bring it back and knowing when to use which version, I think that can be really powerful. Because if you're only the fearless, brave, nothing impacts me ever, that's not reality. But also there are moments where, okay, if your son looks back at you, Arna, and you're shaking and crying, that's not going to help anybody.
It's not gonna help him.
Right.
So I know, right? Exactly. You're
We're all
like,
gonna die.
we're all like, oh my God, I'm doing what I'm doing. What is this thing? I don't know. Oh my God, these waves.
Arna's European vacation.
Yes.
Now a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, exactly. It was so funny. I have a video. I actually started making a little video. Like, this is nice. I have a video of us doing this, and I also, because I really wanted to remember it.
Oh, they'll remember it.
That's going to be a core family member. Like someday when he's
forget it. Yeah.
Oh no. He talks about this. Like, this is like the scariest
day Dad
thing.
freaked out in the boat.
Yeah.
But someday when he has children of his own, you'll say, that time we were on the boat, I was so scared.
I was so scared. I will. And but the thing, to your point, is that there are moments, this is obviously being dad, but there might be a similarity there, is that sometimes you do want to show that you are vulnerable and sad. And, so my father-in-law passed away some time ago, and I'm not a person that, I don't cry easy. So my wife does. She cries at a sad commercial. You go, what are you doing? You're like, I don't know. It's so sad. And she cries. So and it's her family. My family.
I don't want this to be the podcast that you get in trouble.
No worries. She knows. No worries. But I remember. But yeah. But there was this moment where so my father-in-law passed away, and he was such an amazing person. I really loved him.
What's his name?
André.
André. Okay. Yeah.
And André van den Ehrenbeet. So he was a beautiful human being. And anyway, he passed away. And so we were sitting, was at his funeral, basically. And my son was sitting on my right side, my daughter on my left side. And I cried. And I saw my daughter also looking, oh, that's crying. And I think my daughter said a few days later, she said, "You have emotions. I saw you cry." Like,
busted.
And I thought, oh my God. Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really, to me, I mean, I don't consider myself sort of anyone. I'm a bad leader, but there is, vulnerability and being strong at the same time. I somehow I still thinking about your parents. Because they must have been like, as well, when they went to France. Like
there were times when things got scary. It's usually when my dad was driving, but he used to put these like leather gloves on. I kid you not, it was a thing, right? He had a man bag before man bags were cool. That's what the French dudes would do, and I was super
cool.
What do you call it? Cool dad, right? But he liked to drive. Yeah, so that I think that's interesting that how do you modulate between these different modes of, it's not just leadership, but figuring out, like, that's just through experience, I think, is figuring out when to show, when to open up, when to be vulnerable with other people in general. And, definitely when you're, and it's connected to empathy, right? Like Arna, we've talked about this a lot, and it's connected with connecting with other people in a much deeper way, to be able to understand them. And that's when, honestly, that's when humans can do amazing things, right? Is if you get to that sort of, if you make an actual connection with somebody, and it's, like what does that look like? There's these different levels of connection that you have with people. Obviously, if you're, your significant other versus your parent versus your child versus your dog or your cat or your workmate or just a stranger on the street, you can make a connection with a stranger on the street immediately, super deep, right? How does that work, right? Like, it's fascinating about humans and humanity. And we have to figure out a way to get back to that connection, I think, in general. Sorry, just getting philosophical there.
No.
Do you have
So,
any tricks or like,
you have any tricks, please?
yeah,
Can
help
you
us.
make us laugh?
Help
Do you have
us.
like a do you have any magic tricks for us? It's not
No,
video, so it
I
has to work on a podcast. But
my trick is to get people who have tricks to come in and help. Like um, there the I know this is Creative Leaders Unplugged, right?
Mhm.
That's your is that your tagline? No, that's the title of the podcast, obviously.
both.
Um, so this the creativity when you're when you're in that creative mode, and I don't know how to I don't like sit around thinking, oh, I'm being creative now. But I think you get into that sort of flow state, and just all kinds of things can happen when you're there. And if you're somehow able to get there with other people, that's pretty magical, right? Um, I know you guys have talked on your podcast before about art,
Mhm.
right? And art is a certain maybe elevated version of elevated. I know I say that I should do the air quotes now. It seems to be like it's this type of creativity that is only reserved for certain kinds of people, right? And even the word creative or being creative is a thing that most people think that they're not for whatever reason. I love that. I will never forget the Sir Ken Robinson TED video where he talks about how creativity was educated out of us, or not. Yeah, essentially educated out of us, and then our systems, our work systems, our life systems have basically also pushed it out of us as well. But we're all born creative. Like just look at kids; they're all just super creative, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can get to that place where, I mean, creating those moments and those spaces and those activities where you can you can just kind of like see it happening or be part of it happening. That's I've got maybe a handful of tools in my toolkit that I use for that kind of stuff, but there are so many other people that are you know much better at that. Arna's very good at that. And you know, Colin brings theater in. Adam Lawrence brings, that's the thing I don't do. But I know that I can bring those people in if I need them to add that magic, right?
Yeah.
And when you're and and of course, like you're talking about like professional and creative facilitation and guiding people through these processes. But when you're not working,
That's
are
all
you
I do. I only work. Sorry, you're gonna cut you off there, Morgan. No, go ahead.
are American? Okay.
No, please.
Checks out.
Sorry.
Um, the do you have a do you have any like how are you connecting with people then outside of work? Yeah.
Well, I do bike a lot. But I also I like to now post COVID, I'm starting to go back in person, and I like being around people that are. Just the other day, I went to a startup event, and it was like a day of listening to people here in Greenville, South Carolina, in the startup community, and it was great to go back. Like probably 5 years since I've been to the last event, and see how things have grown. So that's fun to to jump into something that, again, where you can kind of learn and listen, where you don't feel like you have to, it's not performative. You don't have to, like, you don't have I bring my business cards, believe it or not, and like pass them out or whatever, and use that as a way of hopefully making a new connection with people. Just having a meal with somebody, with people, with friends. I'm very appreciative of the fact that I'm in a city where both of my parents live, and or three of my parents, actually, three of my four parents, because my parents were divorced. And then also having other family and I talked about travel and all that kind of stuff. I don't, it's maybe I live a boring life. I don't know, but I do. I love traveling, and I'm getting ready to go to Brazil for the first time and go to South America for the first time. So I get a lot of charge out of mixing business and pleasure and being able to do some fun stuff with ideally with and we have the gift, and I have to thank Arna for this in large part, of having a network of colleagues around the world that we can do work with, but then we can also, they can take us around and show us, and we can do some fun stuff together. So I really enjoy that. Creative outlet. Fun fact, my artistic endeavor has primarily been pottery, ceramic work, right? Like doing it, but I don't do it anymore. But I consider myself a potter, a ceramic artist. Even though it's been a long, long time since I've done it. This is my mother. She made this one. The audience can't see this, but a whole bunch of different ceramic work that I use every day, right? And I think that's at some point in my life, I'm going to get back into that. I need to push myself into that. That's one of those things that, you're like, oh, I need to do that. But when am I going to do that? One of these days, maybe when I retire, who knows?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, that's actually really good to do if you retire doing pottery. I can see that. I could see
potter around and just,
Right. I want to ask you something, which is a little bit more about your business. I know because I also obviously know that you went through a major rebranding, which is also like a leap, because right. So there's this big transition in your professional life, which in a way it's kind of, because that's what we've been talking about a lot, being uncomfortable, doing something that is like maybe a bit, which is an adventure, a bit scary, and you don't know what's going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. So also with your company, that's what you've done.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how is that going? How are you feeling? What happened? But why, and what's your plan? And
right. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is it definitely wasn't just me. It was the team. And it was the people that we had to go through. The grueling process was finding the right partners from outside the company to help us with that. And but that process, I kind of jokingly talk about it as a 3-year gestation period for a new baby. And that's a long time to wait. And we didn't know for sure when we started, it was during the pandemic when we started like saying, oh, maybe we should develop our own strategy, and hadn't had to do that up until that point. Business was really good. We had an emergent strategy. We were following the paths where there was opportunity for us. But, I learned that's probably the most I don't know. I've learned a lot. I just keep learning all this stuff, and I'm not sure if it's because I'm forgetting things and relearning them, whatever. But it was.
He told you last year. It's like,
yeah,
I learned this new thing.
But for people that don't know what you do, can you give them just a sentence, a summary, to just give them some context here? Why would you do that?
Recovering engineer.
Well,
what more do you want to know?
Recovering engineer. Yeah. I potter around all the time. In a nutshell, what I do is I help leaders and their teams to get to big change, right? Like that's what we do as a team. I think a lot of what I do is like therapy work for leaders, and in a way, it's like that idea of helping them see what the journey is going to look like, and breaking and helping them break down what that journey is into smaller bits of pain. It's a really interesting conversation, because I think this is really Like this is still part of the branding journey, to be honest with you, Arna. But that's what we do. Like we call ourselves an innovation support firm, and we're not there to do the innovation for our clients. We're there to help them do it and support them through their journey. That's in a nutshell. And we still we talk about the brand as a spin out from Design Thinkers Group, and that's how Arna and I know each other. Design Thinkers Group still exists, and it's still this global network of friends of ours who are very like all in the same, not exactly the same field, but we can collaborate together because we have shared methodology and stuff like that. And the new brand is Reshift. And so look, that was a hard name to come up with. Like, we went through a gazillion names, and we did several different rounds of coming up with a name.
What was the worst name?
The worst name. I don't know. Just one that sticks in my head was human, right? That was a legitimate option that we looked at. Human.
We are humans. What are the other people?
They're just the normal humans.
Who are you? We are human.
Yeah, it's like,
did you hear it the first time? We are human.
Yes.
I mean, I joke because like that at one point was like a real candidate, and we were like, could that work? But it's like,
that's for sure.
So look, it's exactly like, in some ways, sorry, there's a lot that's different. Like, everything's different, but the analogy of like pregnancy, right? You had to find a name for the baby.
It's true.
And then you had to find like all of these, like, decorate the room, like, and get all the bed and all these other like equipments that you need in order to have a child when the child is just this blob of thing. Humans are born, they can't do anything, right? Have you ever seen a horse? Like the foal, the mom drops the foal, like the mom like cleans it up, and then the foal is like, and stands up and then just goes and runs away. Like what's up with humans?
Like an origami, and then it just is a full horse.
That'd be so scary.
We are so bottom of the food chain in that sense. It takes us like 4 years before we can even like form a sentence or something. Maybe.
But it would be very scary if you give birth to a baby and the baby runs away straight away. I'd be like, what the fuck is this?
I think they don't like us.
Like, where's the baby going? No, it's getting run. Like,
but yeah, so we had to do all this stuff with the brand of like designing everything, and we've just got an amazing team. And probably the hardest part was it was the last mile, right? It was, writing the copy and getting this, we had this sort of brand identity stuff done with an agency, and shout out to the Turn Lab, and also a shout out to Signal Brand. Cheryl Farr was an amazing help to me personally. And then, it was just a total learning journey, and in many ways was a manifestation of us going through a big project, just exactly like we help our clients go through, right? Like, it was huge change for us. So it's kind of like this meta thing. We start with doing
that's
all
a good
this
name. Meta.
We could have done that, or just meta. Yeah. Yeah. So like, we'll just double down on the meta.
We're meta. We're human. Are you human? No, we're meta. Stop. Have you seen the horse?
It runs away.
It runs.
Like, we're going to cut this, right? For sure. No doubt. Okay. You can't have laughing in a serious podcast. Okay. Let's get back to
I'm sorry, Mark.
Understood us, Mark.
No more smiling. I can see you smiling now. Not good. Okay.
Who was talking? Yes.
So you guys went through this birthing process.
Oh, thank you, Morgan.
Last phase was the hardest. as similar to childbirth, or so I hear. But
Mm.
but now the baby exists. Now it's a real thing. What's
Mm.
happening? Where are you at in the child rearing process with Reshift?
Well, so you also as a dad, don't you have the experience? So for me, maybe for mothers, it's probably similar, maybe worse. But I'm a dad, and it's the only because I can't imagine being a mother. Yeah, being careful. Oh my God, this is all going
Yeah,
wrong.
I think it was
However,
worse for
was it
the female in the
yes,
in
totally.
the scenario.
Yeah, oh yeah, my God, yes, but, for sure. But still, if you have the baby, yeah.
I didn't want to watch.
So you get
Do I have
the
to be
baby.
here?
Yeah, the baby's there. Yes, the baby's here. You're going to be
You
part
have
of
to
this.
be here. You are going to hold on to my hand, and I am going to cut off all of the circulation in your fingers. Yes.
So you have the baby. So that's your brand. But to me, one of the moments that if you have that baby as a parent, then people come and they want to hold your baby. Because the first thing what happens when you have a baby, you have to kind of let go of your baby. And they'll go oh, there's a baby. Can I have it? Like, oh no, it's really what are you going to do with it? It's a little bit, should be a little bit with the brand right now, when you kind of said, okay, there we are, here's our new logo and our new thing and the website and the whole thing. And because people are going to do stuff because you have no control over what people then make of it, right?
Well, that's like art, right?
It's exactly like art. Art.
You make a thing, and then you're actually making it for other people, and you're making it for yourself. And so, I mean, I think it's going swimmingly, Morgan, right now. I mean, it was very exciting at the beginning, and even before the beginning of the launch, we shared a lot of the artifacts, a lot of the baby's room. We showed them the baby's room, and people were like, "Oh, really like it." And what was interesting is, when we believe in this whole process, right? Like, it was like reinforcing the belief of going through something like systematically with people who have been through it before, right? Which, if you don't get it, that's what we do with other people. But we were totally asking other people to help us do that same thing.
Typically the midwife, but now you're giving birth. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, but like when we were doing the brand strategy stuff, and when we were coming up with the messaging and stuff like that, then we created a website, for example, as an example, and shared that with some close advisors, and just said, in a good design research way, what do you think? And they played back all these things that we had talked about, 6 months ago when we were, we actually managed to get the original messaging that we intended in literally saying, this feels a certain way, or this, this is how I feel about it. We weren't asking them, necessarily how they feel about it, but that's, it's been a really interesting creative journey. And as I said, our like the team of Reshift is a fantastic group of people. And my partner, Steve, Elizabeth, and then all the consultants in our team are just amazing folks. And they're a part of what we're doing now. Like, we're trying to let the world know who we are, and that's kind of where we are.
And I don't have kids, so this is all speculation, but I hear that you have a child, and you could say, oh, this comes from him, and this comes from the mom, and you can kind of start to see where things are coming from. Right. But there's also always going to be some personality trait or interest that you're like, where did that come from? I did not expect that. Have you guys encountered that yet with Reshift?
By the way, with kids, that's not a good thing. You just have to be with Reshift, not yet. No, I don't think so. It's still early. Like, it's 2 months into the new brand, and quite frankly, we launched in mid July, and we that wasn't originally the plan. And I was initially a little bit concerned about like launching in the middle of the summer when everybody's on vacation. But like we totally said, oh, well, this is going to be a good thing because we can do it. And it's kind of like a soft launch, allows us to work out some of the kinks. We didn't really have all that many kinks. But anyway, just to say that September in the US and probably in Western Europe as well is like, that's when people come back from vacation. And that's when, you start engaging. So, that's what we're doing. It feels really good to have the new set of clothes and the new name and all that kind of stuff. And it's a new identity. But we, Arne and I were talking about this before we started. We still are the same people, and we're still doing the similar work, but it gives us, I think, a stronger story to tell about, and a much clearer. It's based on the strategy. So brand is only based on strategy, something we know, but when you go through it, it's actually, oh yeah, really, yeah, they build a strategy before you build the brand. So yeah, it's working. It's working well, I think.
What's the future going to be like? What's your plan? What do you see the next 5 years, 10 years? What do you want?
Come back to the climate thing. I think that's going to be if there's just no doubt that it's already starting. You're starting to see more and more people talking about it and like ringing the alarm bell. And most of those people are really brave because they're, the risk of standing up in a crowd of professional people and saying, people, the house is on fire, right? You can get accused of being Cassandra, and like, that person's always whining, and there's just, it's a ballsy thing to do. And I think, that's going to just intensify. And I think, I hope it does, because I think the house is on fire. And from the other thing I think that is a massive change that's happening around us is the nature of work and the relationship between employer and employee, if you want to use those antiquated words. And I love that, because I think this is where we need to really transform the way that work gets done, and even the way that, as the economic system changes, those of us who are old enough remember when people were freaking out about robots taking everything over, right? Like in manufacturing. And as it happens, what the technology optimists were saying back then is that robots are going to take over the dangerous jobs that are physically demanding for humans to do, and do them better. And then humans are going to learn how to program the robots, repair the robots, and design the manufacturing so that it manufactures better stuff at better quality than humans could do. And I'm sorry, that is the case. And that is exactly what happened. And now, of course, we're all thinking about AI and how that's going to transform everything. And I'm a technology optimist. I think AI is going to end up helping people, but I'm also scared that it may not, right? And so there's a lot happening. I think change is accelerating, and that's good for us, because like that's what we do, is we try to help people work, in the small, tiny, little fractional number of engagements we can be involved in. We try to help humans deal with that change. But I think, Arne, the climate's going to be a big thing. Obviously, AI and technology in general is going to be a big thing. And then I'm the geopolitical situation is really weird right now. Weirder than it's ever been in maybe weird is not the right word, but scary. I think there was a time when the Berlin Wall fell, when there was this kind of like, as the French say, frisson. We was like, very strange. What is going to happen? It could be really bad or it could be really good. And it turned out for a while it was really, really good. That was a bit scary. But where we are right now, I think geopolitically is just, it's like it's a bubbling cauldron, and maybe climate can bring us together. Maybe technology can help us address these things.
Or aliens.
Human.
Or aliens.
Yeah, that's
Alien.
That's the A in AI, isn't it? No,
maybe that's what it's all. Oh,
I'm joking.
That's the aliens. Well, no, but it's something that is outside of our control at a certain point, and it's going to, and it's so big that you need to go and collaborate. In a way, we've shown a little bit of it during the COVID crisis and the lockdowns. There were moments where we felt, hey, we can actually change dramatically.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so to me, the positive side of that is that we can never pretend that we cannot change, because we did it dramatically. We had lockdowns, shutdowns, like boom, everything was like, whoa,
and remember what happened. People all of a sudden started to make these connections with other people.
Absolutely.
And were really caring about one another. Yeah. And why was that? Because there was this like wave of empathy that kind of spread across the world. It's like this shared experience that everybody, I mean, maybe this is a little bit of an exaggeration because we're in the Western world and we're in the Northern Hemisphere and yada, yada, yada. But there was this simultaneous thing that was happening to all of us all at the same time, more or less, some time delays here and there. Again, I know that that's primarily a Northern Hemisphere experience, and primarily a Western experience. There was a different experience for the developing world, but nonetheless, a connectivity that was pretty intense. And you're right. I think, why don't we do a judo move on that and say, hey, we've got this climate thing. Everybody knows it, whether they politically say they agree with it or not. That's a completely different thing. That's a temporary delusion that people have in their minds. But we should be able to dramatically change the way that we are living in the biosphere. That's what it comes down to.
Exactly. And even if you don't believe it's caused by men, we know there's stuff happening. There's a change happening. That's clear. Whoever causes it, human beings or not, there is something happening. We need to kind of really take, the sea levels are rising. You can measure it. It happens. So whoever causes it, we need to go like, how do we fix this?
Yeah, I'm going to have to push back on that. I'm if for no other reason than I know there's a voice in the back of my head says I should push back on that. Man is largely causing it, and if it's okay, so sure. You're right. You could say, well, we got this global warming, we got to do something about it, and yada yada yada. But there's no doubt that man is that the carbon and CO2 equivalent gases that are going on in the atmosphere is causing climate change. There's just no doubt about that, right? How fast it's going to happen, when the tipping points we arrive at those, where they're like, most people probably don't grasp the fact that scientifically, if we get to those points, it's a point of no return. You cannot go back to the way it was before. Our weather patterns will change. I don't want to go on about that, but there's also this biodiversity thing, which we're playing with fire there, right? Like, it's like, think about your body. Your body has this biome in your stomach, right? It's like all these little creatures in your stomach that keep you alive, basically, right? The way that that's an ecosystem. Your body is an ecosystem, and the original ecosystem is the one that we're screwing around with. And we have these species dying left and right. And if the oceans get to the point where the ecosystem, the small ecosystems in the different parts of the ocean break down, and you no longer have the fish supply, that's a pretty significant part of the way that humans survive on the planet. Like, this is happening everywhere. It's happening in the forest. It's happening everywhere. So we have to, it is a totally human caused crisis that we have. Yes. If a volcano goes off, we got a problem, right? That's going to exacerbate things, et cetera, or maybe make things better.
There was a conference, and about this, and there were scientists, and there was a panel, and someone from the audience asked one of the scientists, "Will it be okay?" And he said, "Oh, nature's going to be fine. Humans going to disappear, but nature's that's going to be fine. It will fix itself.
It's not. The planet is going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
That's not a worry. The cockroaches will still be here, folks.
Exactly.
They're going to be laughing.
So, on that positive note,
I don't want to close it on this like doom and gloom stuff. I think humans can figure it out. We have to have this sense of urgency that I believe is growing, right? And if it can rise above the political din that we have, right, the political noise, and become something that a majority of people recognize. And I will tell you, like all generations, I'm looking to my children's and my children's children's generations. They're the ones that are going to have to suffer with this. We have to give them political power, and in a way, they have to step up to that political power as well. And I think that's the human tipping point, where if we can get engagement of people who are actually going to have to suffer and go through the change more than us old farts, that's the hope. Our hope is in the children. And we can leave with that.
Can we leave with that? All right. Okay.
Stevie Wonder. There's a Stevie Wonder song, and we could go out with that.
Well, that could be nice. Yeah.
Children. I don't have it on. I can Spotify here, but anyway.
All right. Thank you very much, Marc.
Thanks, Marc.
Yeah, it's been a joy, a pleasure. Billy, thank you for having me.
Human. And
the people who were involved in that are going to really have a laugh. I'll make sure I share this with my friends that did the brainstorming. Human. It's been great. I appreciate it, Morgan. Thank you, Arna, for having me on.
All right. Thank you.